if they're all right. Well, dear guests, good morning. Welcome everyone. Because of a small delay with the railways, which is no big surprise, I guess, we'll push this forward just with a few minutes and come back and start with a proper video and stuff. But hold your horses and places. Don't go anywhere. We'll start in a few minutes' time, perhaps. Because the train has arrived already at the station, so we're close. Let's keep our thumbs up. Ministers, Excellencies, organizers, guests, great to see you all. And now finally we're on the way, but let's start with a short round of introductions so you know who you're listening to at the moment. I'm Peter Nyman, one of the moderators. sort of we talked with Bettina, I'm perhaps more coming from the outside, the dramaturgical moderator. And Bettina, you'll be the expert moderator, but please introduce yourself. What do you do for a living and what's your background?
I'm a consultant and I work with EU cohesion policy, where I make analysis, and I have been working with the strategy for many years, supporting it in different ways.
And in this pan-Baltic and pan-European context, you're a Dane from Berlin, sort of nowadays,
exactly.
Just in order to put you in, in a context. And Esa, what's your story?
Yeah, my story is, hopefully the mic is on, yes. My story and background is pretty much this Baltic Sea cooperation and EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region, and working long time for Baltic Sea cooperation in our Finnish organization, Baltic Institute of Finland, and then as the coordinator of policy area innovation of the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. And really happy to be here in Lappeenranta in a live event after 3 years with all of you.
It's great to be back here again in a way. We did this 2 years ago in Turku, and I think it was a great forum as well. I mean, well organized and everything worked fine. It was great working together with you as well. But anyway, just to put it shortly, very dramatic times. The first forum after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with all the gas pipes exploding in the Baltic Sea. So it's a dramatic year in time, of course, and being a sort of stone's throw away from the border to the country which sort of started it all and changed the world how it looks now. So, but let's hope that the voices of and words of reason and freedom, I don't think it's an exaggeration, would sort of ring in the ears across the border as well, and something of the spirit of the forum would cross the border, which is sort of a new Iron Curtain as well. But there's opportunity as well, isn't there? I mean, in these times you have to make new decisions, you have to reboot something, and it's a chance to show solidarity and to trim the organizations, and that's what crises do. Or what do you say, Bettina?
Yes, we have a few key themes.
Yes, and what are they?
We have now to look at putting the plan into practice for the Baltic Sea strategy. And this we have to do in an environment which is very different than the one it was actually conceived in. We are now post or mid-pandemic, and we are in the new reality of the war in Ukraine. How can we cooperate in this new reality? What does it mean for the Baltic Sea strategy?
Good, and as you might know already, the Forum 2022 is organized by the city of Lappeenranta, Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Council of the Baltic Sea States. So we hope you will have a great couple of days here, and a lot of good takeaways and thought-provoking intellectual stuff. So the overall themes, did you go through all of them already? Or?
I did.
Okay, so that's...
But I can repeat them if you need to.
No, I think I still remember almost all of it. So hey, a few sort of housekeeping messages to you before we start. In case you have not taken your badge yet, so please do so at the registration desk at the front door of this auditorium.
And we ask everybody to switch off or silent your phones.
I have to check this. Silent mode, yes, that's good. And the Lappeenranta staff are at your service. You will recognize them from the green scarf and blue lanyard. Do not hesitate to ask.
And there is water bottles, and you can fill them at different points outside in the hall.
Yes, and first aid is provided throughout the whole event in the room at the back of the lobby. Ask the personnel. Red Cross people are also present in the lobby during the breaks.
And lastly, smoking is only allowed outside.
So, let's give the floor to the organizers to welcome you to this great event. We'll go with a trio, all on the trot, one at a time though. But let's introduce them all together now, because it's sort of shortish welcome presentations. We have Mayor Kimmo Jarva, City of Lappeenranta, Ambassador Grzegorz Poznański, Director General of the CBSS, and Ambassador Helena Tuuri, Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. So let's go with Mayor Jarva first.
honorable ministers, dear participants, and the annual forum, dear colleagues. The Baltic Sea is surrounded by 9 countries, 8 of which belong to the European Union: Denmark, Germany, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, and Sweden. Today I'm very pleased to welcome you to one of them, Finland, and especially to Lappeenranta, which is a city located on the eastern border of the European Union and has thus seen a lot of history related to the Baltic Sea. For the time being, the biggest challenges are not, however, related to the history, but they are the same ones that this forum is concentrating: saving the sea, connecting the region, and increasing prosperity. These issues are most important to our city too. Firstly, Lappeenranta takes part in saving the sea, or more widely, saving the nature with innovative but concrete actions toward a sustainable future. This was also recognized by the European Union when we were chosen one of the 100 mission cities in the European Union. As a climate capital of Finland, Lappeenranta has also won the European Green Leaf Award last year. We have reached all this because the city of Lappeenranta is a pioneer in green electrification, and our motto is, we turn the emissions into opportunities. We are committed to no waste, no emissions, and to poor water. We also aim at sustainable consumption and have set ambitious carbon neutrality targets. Secondly, the connections and cooperation with other regions and countries is more important to Lappeenranta than ever before, as the geopolitical, ecological, and economical challenges have put us in completely new situation to which we need to find new solutions. And thirdly, we have also understood that saving our important values related to the well-being and prosperity needs new means, and this is better to do with partners. Thus, I'm very pleased to welcome you and this forum to Lappeenranta. I'm looking forward to hearing how plans will be put to practice and what brilliant things we may do together. I hope you enjoy your stay in Lappeenranta, and I wish you all an excellent forum. Thank you.
Welcome, ministers, Mr. Mayor, dear friends, colleagues. I'm really happy that CBSS is again co-organizing EUSBSR annual forum, just as we did in Turku, that was just mentioned, and in many other occasions. Actually, myself, I'm a really proud participant of, I would say, all the first-time EUSBSR annual fora. I had the pleasure to participate in the very first annual forum in 2010 in Tallinn. I had the pleasure to participate and co-organize the first online EUSBSR annual forum in Turku. And now, today, we are in the first, I hope, post-pandemic and new geopolitical situation annual forum here in Lappeenranta. The EUSBSR is about people. Save the sea, increase prosperity, connect the region are not just slogans. These priorities of the strategy are intended to make Baltic Sea region a better, safer place to live by the people, and their implementation is conducted by the people, by you. Therefore, I would like to welcome you all, implementers of the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region, because you are all implementers, you are all changing our region on everyday basis, not only once a year when we meet at the annual forum. When I talk about the people, I have to mention those without whom this particular annual forum would not take place. our dear colleagues from the city of Lappeenranta, good colleagues supporting us always from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland. Thank you for your fantastic cooperation. Thank you, Marco, Marietta, Andri, Aline, Francisca, Dominic, Eva, Helena, and many, many, many others who made this event possible. Thank you. As I said, we live in a time of the great geopolitical change. Russian aggression on Ukraine and events on the Baltic Sea, or the bottom of the Baltic Sea this week, are clear signs that we should redouble our efforts to implement the strategies and priorities for the Baltic Sea region. Not only EUSBSR, I would like to mention the other strategic plans and priorities, such as the HELCOM Baltic Sea Action Plan, CBSS vision for the region by 2030 and its action plan, VASAP long-term visions, and I could go on. There are many important, relevant plans and strategies. The key is now to really put them into the practice and to conduct the robust action to implement those plans and those strategies. I really hope that this meeting in Lappeenranta will help us to discuss how we could further implement those plans and put them into action to build a better, secure future for the people of the BSR. When talking about future, and I have to mention youth. You will hear from the youth representative in a couple of minutes, but let me say that as a CBSS, Council of the Baltic Sea States, we are very proud to really support the youth inclusion in all the political debates about the future of the region, not only in the EUSBSR context, but also the others. You will see that the youth voice is strong, it's very concrete, and it's very substantive. You will see that in the Baltic Sea Youth Declaration, and if you want to learn more, please visit the stand of the Youth for the Future just next to the exit to this room. Dear colleagues, EUSBSR and this forum, all our efforts are for the people of the region. I welcome you all. I wish you have a good debates how to put our strategic plans into action, into practice. We need that. We need that now more than ever. And we really have no time to waste. Thank you very much.
Ministers, dear participants, friends, on behalf of the Foreign Ministry participating team, I also have the honor to welcome you all here in Lappeenranta. It is a really great pleasure to have all of you here, and I'm really relieved and happy that we succeeded to arrange this as a physical meeting. So it's 3 years and 3 months since we had annual forum physically in Gdansk. So now let us talk about implementing our strategy, but let's not forget to discuss with each other and exchange views and have some nice time as well. Welcome to Lappeenranta. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind and hope-inspiring, welcoming words. And we got the show going, which is a great feeling. And we have to, I think, postpone the timetable with like 15 minutes, not now, but lunch was supposed to start at 12 sharp, but I think we'll do it 12:15, because anyway, you'll have 1 hour and 15 minutes time to eat and drink, so I think. We have faced more serious problems. I think we can live with that. Or what do you say? It's okay. Hey, now the keynote speech is Bettina. We have a couple of main themes, but how do you see them? What are they?
This plenary that we are conducting today is going to look at the state of the Baltic Sea region. describing the most pressing issues for our region and how the Baltic Sea strategy can help address these. How can we improve our cooperation in these times?
Good. We'll start with 3 keynotes. And the question was, of course, because the panel is not starting yet, so perhaps the keynotes anyway could be taken from the podium. So let's go first with Foreign Minister of Finland, Pekka Haavisto, who's staying for the panel as well. And great to have you here. There was sort of a buzz here earlier that great to have the Foreign Minister here as well today in Lappeenranta. So great to have you. Welcome.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, let me start by saying that it's a great pleasure to be finally in Lappeenranta after a couple of years of online meetings also on this topic, and I value greatly all the hard work you have and efforts you have done for the future of the Baltic Sea region and getting finally also this high-level forum at place. I have to say that I have had a very Baltic Sea morning, because first called Ann Linde, Swedish minister, and then called Danish minister Jeppe Kofod, and then called Estonian minister Urmas Reinsalu. So I have been interacting already with, it was said that there are 9 countries, 4 of them have already been interacting this morning. So this maybe describes the intensity of the Baltic Sea cooperation, but unfortunately there are some very acute topics. We can come back to those issues later. Taking into account the current circumstances in Europe, the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region has an even more important role, and the work implemented within this framework is more crucial than ever. It's an excellent tool for tackling key challenges of today, such as pursuing the green transition or recovery after the pandemic. Our efforts make us resilient when faced with emerging challenges. But I would like to say a couple of words about the political situation. This year we have witnessed profound changes in our security environment. Russia's illegal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine has shaken the very foundations of the European and even the global rules-based security order. Finland is a vocal supporter of multilateralism and the rules-based international order. I believe now it's even more important to keep multilateral structures alive. We need to work hard to renew and maintain our jointly agreed rules-based system. The Russian invasion of Ukraine violates the very foundations of any country, their sovereignty. It's a blatant breach of the international law and the UN Charter. During previous years, we could already witness tensions and deteriorating security situation in our region. After Russia's attack on Ukraine, we entered a completely new reality. Our perception of Russia and European security changed overnight in February. It became clear that Russia was ready to take high risks to advance its political objectives. It was able to mobilize a large military force, talk loose about nuclear weapons, and blatantly break international law. Russia, which should be part of the European security order, now wants to annex and control its sovereign and independent neighbor. The goal is to deny the sovereignty of Ukraine and to change the existing security architecture in Europe. Recent declarations by Russia to mobilize further reserve forces and organization of sham referenda on the Ukrainian territory tell us that Russia's aim with regard to Ukraine have not changed. Russia's dangerous rhetoric about nuclear weapons is also unacceptable. The security situation is more serious and more difficult to predict than at any time since the Cold War. The change is expected to be long-lasting. In order to return to being a normal member of the international community, Russia will have to end this war and be held accountable for the crimes it has committed in Ukraine. Last week on Friday, the President of Finland and the Ministerial Committee on Foreign and Security Policy decided that the government would issue a resolution placing significant restrictions on the issuing of visas to Russian citizens and on their entry into the country in order to prevent serious damage to Finland's international position. We look at ways to limit the travel from Russia to cover only travel that is strictly necessary and not tourism. One of the historic events that we have witnessed this year was that Finland and Sweden made the decision to apply for NATO membership. This was a reaction to the fundamental change in the security environment in Europe. The ratifications of our membership have proceeded quickly, as we now have only 3 countries still in the process. Actually, I think only 2 countries by today, because I heard that Slovakia is now processing, so we have Hungary and Turkey still remaining. We need to keep up the pressure on Russia that now uses also energy as a weapon. We are taking measures to end our dependency of Russian energy and raw materials. We are focusing on the green transition, which the geopolitical situation has further accelerated. With winter approaching, we need to remain resilient. In Finland, the society is firmly supporting Ukraine. Finns are understandably concerned about their own economy. However, there is a strong feeling of solidarity with Ukraine and Ukrainians. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, Finland views the regional cooperation as highly important. The cooperation within this framework has had a stabilizing effect on the Baltic Sea region. Sadly, also the regional cooperation has suffered from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's important to continue our regional cooperation for the future of the Baltic Sea. I believe that one of the key elements why the Baltic Sea region cooperation is successful deals with its multi-level governance. The region's local level, such as cities and municipalities, as well as organizations, universities, private sector and other stakeholders, create a network whose efforts are of utmost importance. I value your work greatly. Everyone's role in the implementation is now crucial. In addition, the role of the youth, which was already mentioned here, is very vital. We will hear about their thoughts at the closing plenary tomorrow. I wish you all a fruitful event and a good networking, as we say, within the strategy. Keep calm and implement. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Haavisto. And a short question, because we'll hear more of you in the panel, but our information was that you have to leave at 11:15. Is it still so sharp? Or ish? Ish, okay, that's good to know. We have a bit more to play with. And our next keynote, I'm very happy to see this person in person because of this train incident, but we're all here now, which is a great thing. So we have Bettina Martin, Minister of Science, Culture, Federal and European Affairs, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Welcome. And great to see you here.
Excellencies, honorable ministers, dear Mr. General Poznański, dear Mr. Katainen, and dear friends of the Baltic Sea region. I'm very happy to be here today, being able to talk to you, not in the train anymore. Sorry you had to wait, but I'm very happy to be here. I'm, as you just mentioned, Bettina Martin. I'm the Minister of European Affairs and Culture and Science in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, which is the upmost northeastern state in Germany. And we're bordering the Baltic Sea, of course, and we're on the other side, we're bordering Poland. History is in a speed mode. This is what we are experiencing at the moment. It is a time of multiple crises. We are experiencing the enormous challenge of climate change. Over the last almost 3 years, we have been fighting a worldwide pandemic. It is still not quite over yet. And now, worst of all, we are facing Russia's brutal war against the Ukraine. And in effect, we are in a serious energy crisis. Are we prepared for this? Are our societies prepared to adapt to apparently less favorable living conditions? And what can macro-regional cooperation do about this? When the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region was adopted in 2009, the world looked quite different than nowadays. The Baltic Sea region was on its way to deepen and expand its cooperation with the EU, within the EU framework, and there was a broad consensus that Russia should be involved somehow in this cooperation. In the growing European Union, the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region was a first prototype of a macro-regional strategy. a prototype of a more flexible approach, better adapted to the needs for the territorial cooperation. With the strategy, the Baltic Sea region was giving its own framework, its own reference for cooperation. The region of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, where I come from, has always put a strong emphasis on cooperating with our neighbors, with our neighbor in Poland, as well as the Scandinavian and Baltic countries. We understand ourselves as the German gate to the Baltic Sea, and we have very much profited from this cooperation over the last 3 decades. And I would like to add, we also have had an active exchange with our partner region, the Leningrad Oblast in Russia. This has changed abruptly overnight on February 24th. Today, the Iron Curtain is back, separating the democracies in the region from Russia, separating the democracies in the region from Russia. And of course, in the face of this war, also Mecklenburg-Vorpommern cut all its ties to the aggressor. More than ever, the Baltic Sea cooperation has become a must. In reaction to the Russian war against the Ukraine, countries align globally according to their political convictions. The political and economic fragmentation of the world is progressing. Apparently, globalization, as we know it, has peaked and we enter into a phase of deglobalization. Global value chains do not work anymore as they used to. We have understood how vulnerable our supplies of essential goods have become during the last decades. Let me mention pharmaceuticals, computer chips. In Germany, we are painfully becoming aware how dependent we are on fossil fuels from abroad. The supply crisis in the field of energy is the biggest challenge we are facing at the moment. Citizens are wondering how they will get through the winter, how they will pay their bills with the exploding energy prices. We need to find political solutions and ways to support households and businesses. And I guess that's the case all over Europe. On a national level and, of course, on the European level, we need to act. I'm very happy that the President of the EU Commission, von der Leyen, has made very concrete proposals in her State of the Union 2 weeks ago. In the medium term, value chains might become more regionally organized again. And in order to become independent in the field of energy supply, we have to speed up the production of renewable energy, wind, sun, and biomass. But this will take time we don't really have. And yes, this offers new opportunities for investments in our regions. The flip side of the coin, however, are higher prices for products and services. On top of this, during the last years, we have seen a trend towards national solutions to the detriment of multilateral cooperation and coordination, even within the EU. Within a relatively short period of time, the current challenges have become more imminent than ever. To engineer a stable, secure, and sustainable energy supply at reasonable prices. To step up the transition to a climate-friendly economy and to promote the digitization of our aging societies. These developments have produced feelings of insecurity and stress has spread in societies. Surging prices, especially for energy, threatens the social stability and societal peace. And this brings me back to my initial questions. What can macro-regional cooperation do about this? As a Minister of EU Affairs, I firmly believe that national policies need to be complemented by macro, regional, and EU cooperation if we want to be successful. This is essentially true for the Baltic Sea region. You will hardly find any other macro region with so tightly knit cooperation structures. And cooperation creates trust, produces results, and helps us to realize that the potential we have in the region. And my region, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, contributes to this cooperation. For example, in the field of renewable energies, especially in offshore wind energy, where we are very strong. Already today, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern has achieved a renewable share of 182% of its own electricity demand, the largest share of renewable energy sources in the whole of Germany. The recent agreements in the field of offshore wind energy may serve as an example. Between my region, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern and Sjælland, in the Danish side, 2 offshore wind farms have been connected with an interconnector. Through this combined grid solution, it is possible to direct the electricity produced in both directions, from Germany to Denmark and the other way around. This is a worldwide unique installation. This approach is also followed in the recent German-Danish agreement on the Bornholm Energy Island. Through better interconnections of the offshore power grids, we gain more stability of the supply. But cooperation needs to become much faster in order to support the urgent need for change. Much faster in identifying best practice cases and to roll them out across the region where appropriate. So far, our instruments for cooperation do not provide the suitable support to speed up cooperation. EU funding instruments follow a medium-term approach. From the call for proposals to the start of a project, it takes about a year. I am of the opinion that we need a complementary instrument that offers an unbureaucratic and short-term support to actors of regional development who want to exchange with their peers in other Baltic Sea countries on new technologies and innovative approaches. Policy area innovation and the network of ERDF managing authorities has worked on pilot actions in this direction. Given the imminent challenges that I have mentioned, a comprehensive approach for the strategy should be developed. By closing, I would like to emphasize that we should mobilize all the resources available in the Baltic Sea region in our quest for progress. The local and regional levels are the linchpins in this process. Therefore, the strategy should develop a stronger multi-level governance approach. Mecklenburg-Vorpommern and the CPMR Baltic Sea Commission stand ready to enter into such a process. Thank you very much for your attention.
Minister Martin, thank you very much. And now we have our final keynote before the health break, but let's do that per video. So we'll go to Commissioner Cohesion and Reform's European Commission, Elisa Ferreira, per video now.
Dear colleagues, it is really a pleasure to address this 13th annual Baltic Sea Forum. I am sorry that circumstances have prevented me from being with you in South Karelia in person, but my spirit is very much with you. At last year's annual forum, I started my intervention by noting how different the world looked since the Baltic Sea strategy was launched way back in 2009. None of us could have imagined then how different the world would look in just 12 short months. Large-scale war has returned to Europe. The unprovoked and unjustified Russian aggression in Ukraine is the biggest military attack in Europe since World War II. I am well aware that the Russian border is just 30 kilometers from this forum, and that Russian aggression has historical resonances and future practical consequences, not just for the region of South Karelia, but for the whole Baltic Sea region. For example, the key objective of saving the sea has been seriously impacted, as Russia is no longer part of the collective efforts to combat pollution. I am convinced that the European Union macro-regional strategies have a role to play in weathering the impact of crisis by deepening connections, establishing new trade, research, cultural links. You are building resilience to prevent external shocks. We in the European Commission are responding in 3 key ways. First, we are helping with refugees. We are supporting national and local governments as they welcome those fleeing the war. In April already, we had the first support ready under what we called CARE, that stands for Cohesion's Action for Refugees in Europe. And in the first 2 packages, we mobilized already about 10 billion euros to support reception centers, accommodation, food, clothing, medical and psychological support, and labor market integration. But the third element of this CARE package is currently being discussed by the Council and by Parliament, and we hope it will be adopted soon, to further support those who welcome refugees and deal with the impact of the war in the implementation of projects. Now, the second action, as you know, was that the fact that the European Union has imposed restrictive measures on cooperation with Russia and its ally Belarus. Cross-border programs with these countries are now operating in very challenging and limiting circumstances, and regions bordering these countries must look for new partners. Therefore, we are acting to create a simpler and more flexible legal framework for these programs. The Commission is proposing a new regulation that will simplify program implementation, support actions for refugees, and alleviate the financial burden. And to minimize the consequences for the European Union beneficiaries, the regulation ensures that European Union member states and Norwegian beneficiaries can still finalize their parts of projects that are supported under these programs. And now the third dimension. The third dimension is that we are working towards energy security. The recent European Union proposals aim to rapidly reduce dependence on Russian fossil fuels and fast forward the green transition. And the Commission has also recently proposed a new emergency instrument to stem the soaring energy prices. I believe that the EU macro-regional strategies can also play a role in the energy situation affecting Europe. You can facilitate investments in hydrogen infrastructure. You can help remove bottlenecks in the solar energy grids. And you can help in developing cross-border electricity and energy markets. This highlights, once again, the strength of the macro-regional strategies, working with the mosaic of expertise at every level and across borders. And in future, I hope to see even more of you participate, bottom-up approach, bringing solutions which are more difficult to achieve in formalized contexts. I think energy is ripe for such interventions, and indeed, I encourage you to use every tool in the macro-regional arsenal to address the emerging needs caused by Russian aggression. We in the Commission will monitor the situation and stand ready to take further action as the circumstances evolve. We count on you to continue to give us territorial intelligence and view from the ground. One last point before I close. I would like to underline the importance of youth involvement in macro-regional strategies. The 2021 Action Plan clearly recognizes the role of youth, involving them through the Baltic Sea Youth Forum. I believe that the time is ripe for further institutionalize the Youth Forum, involving youth in all policy areas of strategy. In conclusion, my thanks to the organizers of this annual forum, the city of Lappeenranta, the Council of the Baltic Sea States, and the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. We live, in fact, in challenging times, and you have more than reason to the challenge in the excellent job you have done and in the very topical and meaningful program of this event. When I look at your discussion topics, seas and waters, societal security, the digital and the green transition, climate change, energy and connectivity, I see here the key topics for the future. As always, my thanks to the Interreg Baltic Sea Programme for the support and the co-financing of the forum. And it is worth mentioning that thanks to your timely preparation, your program was one of the first ones adopted by the Commission for the new programming period. Congratulations for that as well. Dear colleagues, I sincerely wish you a fruitful discussion and a productive annual forum. Thank you very much.
That's encouraging words and a nice video presentation from Commissioner Ferreira, and great colors, weren't they? I mean, the combination was really, colors are good communication as well. That's good. Hey, now I think we're going to have to raise the forum's level of performance still further, because we have a healthy break provided by the policy area health for a few minutes in order to raise our energy levels and blood circulation. We have Iina Tiittula on the stage. She's the coach of a world champion team in cheerleading. So are you ready for a bit of energy-raising performance?
Okay, can you hear me? Perfect. Hello, everyone. Don't worry, today we're not going to do cheerleading. Tomorrow you might see a little bit of it, but today we're doing a healthy break, which means that everybody can do all of the movements, either sitting or standing up, and if possible, I would recommend everybody to stand up for this occasion. Perfect, thank you. So first, we want to activate our brains a little bit, so we're going to do a little bit of brain exercise. Your other arm is going to do a point, and the other arm is going to do a thumb. And then we switch. And then we switch. And then we switch. Few more times. Try to keep the thumb down when the other one is pointing. Okay, right, perfect. You did great. Next, we're going to do a little bit upper body. So we start rolling our shoulders up, back, down, front. Back, down, front. Back, down, front. Last time up, keep them there. We start to circulate them on different directions. So the other one goes in front, and the other one goes back. Perfect, and switch, other direction. Yes, amazing. Next one might be a little bit harder for the gentlemen in their jackets, but we're gonna put our palms together and our elbows together, if possible. Then we start raising our arms up and down, and try to reach as high as you can. It might feel a little bit stretching in the upper back. Few more repetitions. Perfect, last one, and shake it out. Perfect. Few more movements that we're going to do. We're going to imagine that we have two pizzas in our arms, two pizza plates, and the pizzas cannot fall to the floor. So we want to keep our palms all the time facing forward up to the roof. We start to bring the pizzas behind our back. We roll them in front and back to the starting position. How many kept their pizzas in there? Okay, we need to practice again. So pizzas in the air. We bring elbows to the back. We roll, roll, roll to the front. Okay, it might be a little bit harder that way, so we're switching up the direction. We're going front, up, back, in front. That was much easier, so let's do it again. Front, switch, down, and back to the front. And one last time, keep them in the air. Switch, 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 go back, and bring them to the front. Amazing. Last one that we're going to do a huge applaud to yourselves. Amazing job. Great job. Hopefully this tiny break got your brain a little bit functioning, so we're ready to listen to our next speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm quite sure no one wants my pizzas after the performance. Perhaps, dogs or something. Anyway, now the health break. That was it. So let's move forward to. Let's wait a few minutes for Bettina as well. She gets from Iina her microphone back. But hey, I'll invite the panelists on stage now to take their seats for the panel. Let's ask back on stage Bettina Martin, Minister of Science, Culture, Federal and European Affairs, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. And then I think the seating could be actually, we have method to the madness, so it could be there, exactly. Then we have Mr. Pekka Haavisto back on stage again, Foreign Minister of Finland, as you know. Could take that seat, for instance. And one of the train journey riders, Mr. Jyrki Katainen, President Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra. Hi, great to see you. And Ms. Krista Mikkonen, Minister of the Interior of Finland, welcome. And you heard about Ferreira talk about youth here as well, the role of youth. So we have Silva Laure, spokesperson of the Baltic Sea Youth Camp 2022. Hi, welcome, great to have you. The seating order is still as planned, isn't it? That's good.
It looks correct, yep.
So, how we go forward from here, Bettina?
Now we are going to discuss the key questions that
we'll get on the screen.
We'll get them on the panel, on the screen.
And that's for the audience, because we need you for the Q&A. So for your questions or comments or whatever comes to your mind, you can use the Slido instrument in order, because we won't be having live microphones here in the audience, so please use the Slido instrument. And we'll take questions from the audience a bit later, but please prepare already. And here are the questions. Bettina, do you want to cue them in somehow?
Yeah.
Or explain the method to the madness?
We will first ask the panel to reflect on the first question, and we start from the left, and we go through the panel. And so we wanted to ask the panel, in the light of the recent events, what are the most important issues in the Baltic Sea region that needs urgent attention?
That's a great question.
Please.
So I'll start. Well, first of all, it's very nice to be here, and it's great that we have this event after the years so that we really can be here physically. And I think all the crises that we have met in recent years, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the energy crisis, it's really needed that we can be together and discuss together about all the problems. And then one thing I want to say before I answer the question is that, like the Commissioner Ferreira said, that we are here very close to Russian border. But I can tell you that the situation at the border is very stable, and even though the traffic has been more active in recent days, the Finnish border guard and other security authorities are working very effectively and ensuring our security. So we don't need to be worried, but of course we are looking at the situation all the time very carefully, and if needed, we take any actions needed. But, well, like I said, there have been a lot of crises recently. And some of the crises have been that kind of a little bit surprise for all of us, so we haven't been prepared as well as we could have been. But one crisis that can't any longer be a surprise to anyone is the climate crisis. And I think that's the most important to take care of. And the climate crisis is not only the question of environment, it's the question of security, it's the question of the economic, it's the question of the society. So I think we really need to concentrate on that, even though now we have more acute crises at the hand. So I would say that in anything we are doing around the Baltic Sea and in the Baltic Sea region, we need to take care at the same time we tackle the climate crisis, even though we have the other things on the mind at the same time. So that would be my answer, that's the most important thing that we need to take care of.
Thank you very much. And the next is Mr. Katainen.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to visit Lappeenranta, which is the capital of sustainable energy technology. And actually, did you know that Lappeenranta is also a capital of hydrogen? There are two reasons for this. First of all, the University of Lappeenranta and industries are developing hydrogen technologies, green hydrogen technologies. But hydrogen is also a name of local delicacy. it's eatable thing. So it's kind of a meat pastry or meat pie in which there are some ham and egg. I really recommend you to try it.
We had it yesterday.
Okay, you had it.
Yes.
Okay, right. Sorry, I didn't know that. I need to test it again today. Coming back to the issue or the question, what are the most burning things for Baltic Sea region? The most burning thing, of course, is the security, because the war, Russian brutal war in Ukraine, may have different implications, not only traditional military implications, but different types of implications, and it may take really interesting or weird forms, as we have seen in today's news, for instance, the explosions of gas pipelines. So Baltic Sea region is representing the borderline between extreme authoritarianism and democracies within the EU. Of course, Ukrainians and Ukraine is the battlefield between authoritarianism and democracy. But within the EU, we are the borderline. And therefore, the EU's unity and action is very important for the Baltic Sea region, as well as NATO's and EU's seamless cooperation in various forms when addressing the security issue. The second point I want to make is that the traditional challenges we have faced, like climate change, will not disappear anywhere. So that's why we have to concentrate on the traditional challenges too. So I would say that the brutal war will even make it faster to go through the transition. So there is extra boost for green transition because we have to look at through new lenses, for instance, our energy supply chains. No country in the world can ever trust on Russia in energy supply. So for me, it's very difficult to imagine that the gas would go through pipelines to anywhere in Europe except maybe a couple of exceptions. So there is a need for new investments, and investments are very good for the economic development. And now when we need economic stimulus, we have to make sure that it's sustainable. And in our region, there are lots of opportunities for sustainable energy production in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyrki, Katainen. And for instance, here, Silvia, Laure, perhaps from a youth perspective somehow, the answer to question number one, perhaps eagerly waiting.
Yes, I will try to do that, of course. First, I want to say hello to everybody, excellencies, policymakers, and organizers. It is an honor to be on this forum, and in particular to have a word on the opening plenary. And as said previously, I am here to represent the youth, but in particular the Baltic Sea Youth Camp, which took place here in Lappeenranta in preparation for this forum. And when talking about this camp, I would like to add that there was and is a Baltic Sea Youth Declaration that was made for this particular forum that talks in detail about the youth's point of view in regards to the recent events and important issues. So I would advise everybody to get more acquainted with that. But when speaking about recent events, I think, of course, the war that's happening right next door to us, basically, is the most important issue, which then creates sub-issues such as the energy crisis. And this is a problem that affects, of course, not only the youth, but also everybody that lives in the Baltic Sea region. So I think that that is the most important issue that needs to be tackled and needs to be talked about within this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think for practical purposes and the timetable, perhaps we take Mr. Haavisto first and see where we land timetable-wise after that. So.
Okay, you expect that my answer is very long.
We don't know.
So thank you for that. Two issues, actually. First, I think the global planetary crisis, climate, pollution, biodiversity loss has been mentioned already by others, but if we look long term, I think that's also something that is most acute at the Baltic Sea region and something that needs our action from all of us. But then, of course, maybe I want to hint to the topic that was raised by Jyrki, Katainen as well, that we have been, of course, thinking that the seas are connecting us. And they are connecting us not only through the traffic, but also through pipelines and electrical cables and so forth. And we have come to the situation where just today, we discuss what kind of sabotage can be done to our energy infrastructure and how vulnerable our energy infrastructure is for this kind of sabotage or cutting by purpose pipelines or even electric connections and so forth, or other cables. And that just reminds us in what kind of world we are living in and how we have to, for example, think our energy mix in the way that we are not totally dependent on one source like some countries have been with the Russian natural gas and so forth. And this is a new type of thinking that we are doing. Somebody mentioned that this is a new type of anti-globalization when we have to find our friends and maybe democratic countries to work together more globally, more actively. And I think it's a big challenge and also needs a new kind of thinking. How do we minimize the risks for our societies and how we increase our security and how we avoid new type of threats like hybrid and cyber threats and so forth. And also reminds how vulnerable we are if somebody wants to misuse these opportunities to sabotage our life and so forth. This is maybe my only thought in this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now let's finalize the round with Bettina Martin.
Thank you very much. So much has been said, so I won't repeat it all. I also mentioned already that for us, I think a very important thing is to become independent of other sources of energy and especially independent of fossil fuels. And that we have this current situation where all these crises don't come one after the other, but they're all building up on top of each other. And to say maybe something positive in this terrible situation is that there are synergies. If we now have to speed up with becoming independent of fossil fuels in Europe, around in the Baltic Sea, we will speed up to fight climate change. So that's maybe one good, side effect, if there can be any good side effects of this geopolitical situation at the moment. But I would like to add one point that hasn't been made. I worry about our democracy in Europe, that all these stresses and all these problems, the high prices, the inflation we are facing, will bring stress into our societies. We can see it in Germany. There are demonstrations week after week after week, and it's always more people. And I understand these people. They're worried. They're worried that they can't pay their bills anymore, that they have to close down their enterprises. And I think we need to really be very careful as policymakers that we don't lose contact and that we do help in this very difficult situation and build bridges. And I think that's also something very important for the Baltic Sea region, because we want to keep our democracies alive and prospering. And I think there we have to really focus on too.
Minister Martin, thank you very much. And round number 2, Bettina, would you please introduce, I guess, Mr. Haavisto could take the first question, or the first answer.
I hope Minister Haavisto has time to help us reflect a little bit. Now we have heard what are the current or new needs. The second question is more about what have we actually learned the last years on Baltic Sea cooperation? What are the lessons? What have we achieved? What can we learn? What can we use to solve these issues that we have just spoken about? Minister Haavisto.
Well, one of the remarks I would like to make, and this is also reflecting maybe what we learned about the youth and your activities here, is that when Baltic Sea cooperation started, maybe it was institutional in the beginning of the HELCOM, work and so forth. But then very rapidly it became also a civil society cooperation and the local governments cooperation and so forth. And then at some moment I felt that it was institutionalized again, you know, maybe on the ministerial level and so forth, and maybe it's some kind of waves we are living in. And what I'm looking for very much is this kind of stronger local component, stronger civil society component. And I think what I have learned in my life is that civil society component actually keeps the work alive. And whenever it comes to the ministerial level or institutional level, there is a risk that it will come too formal. It starts to be only, you know, official meetings and so forth. And if people don't have a, so to say, Baltic Sea identity, then we are in a trouble. And I think it's very important that we keep that identity. And particularly it's so important now with Russia. We have a lot of problems with the Russian state, but at the same time we recognize that there are civil society, there are people who are thinking in new ways, people who are environmentalists, even in extremely difficult circumstances. How do we keep contacts to these people over the official structures and so forth? And maybe that's something that I'm concerned at the moment, but something that we could do more on the civil society and local level as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's release Minister Haavisto with a round of applause. Thank you very much. I think we can, you know, take the round this way towards Mikkonen. So if Bettina Martin, Minister Martin, you go first.
Well, maybe one point I would like to mention is what we learned through the crisis in the pandemic. You know, we've talked a lot about the war now, and we're also still going through the pandemic. It's not over yet. And I think we have learned that we also there shouldn't make ourselves dependent on production, for example, of pharmaceuticals, or also on other, you know, materials that we are all, you know, the supply chains are interrupted. And that's something we I think I said that when I gave the keynote too, that we will develop our more regional production chains too, so we are all independent of you know, crises like this. And we just heard we're very vulnerable. We learned that we're vulnerable. So I think this will be one of the solutions to become more local, and not in a negative way, to become more local and within that scheme support each other in cooperation in the Baltic Sea region.
That's very interesting. Say the medical chemistry dependency on China, for instance. That's a very good. And someone said it would take around 5 years to actually sort of remove or restart everything in the West, so to speak. Laure.
Well, I think the key lesson in relation to the Baltic Sea cooperation right now is the fact that the cooperation is the strongest it's ever been, not only in the recent crises, but also reoccurring ones, such as environmental crises, when one country doesn't have the resources to deal with something as horrible as let's say, a wildfire. Countries within the Baltic Sea region can then come to aid and help each other out in dealing with this problem. And that goes hand in hand with any problem that is occurring in a specific area of the Baltic Sea region or a specific country for that matter. So I think that is the key lesson, that everything is going well and we're on the right track.
Thank you very much. And Katainen, the same question, key lessons in relation to the Baltic Sea cooperation.
I have 2 points. First one is that it concerns the sea itself. We have managed to find a common tone and common language how to treat the sea, even though the condition of the sea is not perfect. It's quite far away from being perfect, but nevertheless, the countries have managed to manage the sea much better than a few years back. The second point is that when I still was in the European Commission, I found that Baltic Sea region countries were strong supporters of some EU policies, namely internal market development and trade policy. So it's quite obvious because all the Baltic Sea region countries are trading countries. So the further development of the EU and our trade policy was core issue where we found each other. And I really would like to encourage the countries to deepen this cooperation in the future.
Thank you. Let's finalize the round with Minister Mikkonen.
Well, the recent times have shown that every authority needs to be prepared for changing circumstances. And we need to share the information. And I think it's very important that we have a good cooperation between different authorities, between different countries. And of course, now the recent years have shown that, for example, the rescue services play a very important role. And we need to maintain this good cooperation and be prepared that we can help each other, that we are ready to help each other, and also that we are ready to take the help when somebody is giving it, because there might be still be some kind of problem and legislation problems in that kind of questions. So it's very important that we are prepared. And I think the EU's Risk-EU mechanism have shown to be very efficient. And that's something that we need to even get strengthened and make sure that the capacity of the rescue services in every country is high enough and we have a good cooperation.
Minister Mikkonen, thank you very much. And before we take question number 3, let's, Bettina, turn to Esa, what do you say, and ask him whether we already have a lively and active audience asking a lot of questions and making comments.
Yes, thank you. Actually, there's a lot of questions already coming,
okay, right.
and good ones. And should we take the first?
Sure.
No. You can see there already a set of first questions, and I will give the first. I will take the first one. Eija Varis was the first, and having this kind of a very fundamental question to you, panel, about this current situation and how should we redirect EUSBSR because of the Russian attack in Ukraine? Should we do something differently? And what? Who would like to start to answer on this?
Well, I can just answer in general that I think now the new situation, it has changed a lot. We need to reconsider the Baltic Sea strategy, but also that's what we are doing nationally and regionally now in Finland, and I think in every country. So I think a lot have changed if we think about the time we did the strategy. So it's really important to look at it again and see that what is need to be changed.
Minister Martin looks pleadingly in this way, so I think you want to say something.
I could add something. I think we have to be very aware of the fact that Russia won't be a partner for many, many, many years probably, and that we have to think the Baltic strategy and this region in general without Russia. And I said it before that we need to become independent of them. And I mean, I come from a country we have no natural resources when it comes to energy. We need to really rethink the whole energy, topic. And I think that's one very crucial point. We need to become independent. And I thought it was very interesting what the foreign minister said, that one should not forget the people in Russia, who the civil rights movement there, and how to connect that. I think it's a very difficult question at the moment, but for us, it's in Germany, it's the crucial point: how can we become independent in energy questions?
And I've seen some of those windmills outside Rostock, but I guess they won't be enough yet.
Well, we are contributing to independency by building LNG terminals at the moment on the coast in Lubmin, which is northeast of our little state. So LNG as a bridge technology, LNG terminals are coming one in December, the next one next year, and that will help bridging the energy problem in Germany, but also to our eastern neighbors. And we're building to support the oil boycott, the oil sanctions in our port in Rostock. We're building, we have the ships to build to bridge the oil transport to the refinery. So we are, and that's in the future going to be a hub for hydrogen. So we're trying, but we need speed, of course.
Sure. Anyone else?
Just very quickly, I'd like to echo the topic the colleagues have already mentioned. I would put the focus on energy sector too, because we need to get rid of Russian and overall the fossil energy. And as we have well-functioning common energy market, so we are all forced to rethink how we can produce enough energy. And when this is on the agenda, it must be sustainable.
Yes, we had a lot of more questions, something fitting into this round as well.
Yes, and I would have this one next by Ilkka Räsänen, and this has been a very popular question, a lot of likes to Ilkka's question here as well, so about the green transition and urgency of that, and that everyone is talking about that at the moment. But what would be the most important fast-track action in Baltic Sea region when we are speeding up green transition?
Very good question, yes.
If I may start, first of all, it's very important to recognize that all the investments must be done by private sector. So it's a private exercise if we want to produce more clean energy. But the public sector can be a significant enabler. So there, for instance, EU funding can be helpful, and also national public authorities when permitting the private investments. So it doesn't make any sense that all the countries separately are thinking the energy entity. Instead, we should look at who is producing and what, because we can trust each other, and as we have a well-functioning energy market. So what German authorities are doing, or how fast they are permitting something, it means significant change in Baltic Sea region energy market. Same as if Finland is doing or permitting new power plants. So keep focused that we need private investment, but then public authorities can be a significant enabler.
And a provocative question, is nuclear energy, is it now green energy or not? Who wants to take that? So nuclear energy, is it now green energy or not in these circumstances?
There's no emissions, but it's more semantical thinking whether it's green or not, but at least it's purer, cleaner than fossils.
Mr. Martin.
Well, in Germany, as you might know, we have a law that we're phasing out nuclear energy, and which was a direct reaction to Fukushima, and we don't have a solution for the atomic waste afterwards in Germany. So I think it's not a green. It's also not a green source of energy, but however, our energy minister on the federal level yesterday announced that the 2 atomic plants that were supposed to go into, to stop at the end of the year will continue till April at least next year, because we do need every source of energy, but we in Germany don't think it's a green energy.
But yeah, France probably they will reopen their reactors.
Nuclear power, as everybody knows, is a highly political issue, and it divides countries. In this country, nuclear energy has strong support amongst the population and amongst the political parties. And when looking forward, I think the more small reactors may become an interesting opportunity to increase cleaner energy. In France, significant amount of energy is produced by nuclear, but like we heard in Germany, the situation is completely different. So one lesson we have learned in our case is that it's always good to have wide variety of energy sources. So we are, this country, Finland, is not dependent on Russian energy that much. And we have a wide variety of different energy producers. So it's also a matter of security that not to be too dependent on one technology.
Mikkonen.
Well, for the nuclear energy, I must say that we need to look at the whole life cycle. And of course, I mean, even though there are no CO2 emissions, there are a lot of other problems for the environment, and also there's still a lot of security problems. But what I wanted to say that it's important that when we get rid of the fossil energy, and I think the wind turbines are one of the answer, but it's very important that we are doing planning together for the whole Baltic Sea areas. And there's also some risks and also for the marine accidents. So that's the one reason we need to plan carefully together, and also some other things that we need to take concern when we are planning. But I see that these giant wind turbines are one answer, but we need to do a careful planning. And I know that, and I think this careful planning also help us to build them faster, because then there won't be this long process with long cases into court and things like that. So that's really one answer how we can speed up the green transition, that we are doing the careful planning together.
Bettina.
I wanted to just quickly add to something that the speakers already mentioned about green transition, and in particular power plants. The fact that we have to take historical context into this area of decision making is very crucial, because as said previously, different countries and those citizens of those different countries have different attitudes towards this particular type of green transition. So I think it is only natural that more education should be implemented when thinking about how to implement green transition and how to put it into action. So informing the citizens and the younger generation, of course.
Right. Thanks. Esa, and the next question?
Yes, thanks. A lot of questions coming, so thanks for active participation. Maybe taking this kind of a civil society or citizen engagement perspective. Next, there are a couple of questions related to that. And this one from Safira Shubak. So how do we make the achievements and improvements of EU and regional collaboration here in the Baltic Sea region more known to the regular citizen? And in general, how do we strengthen citizen engagement, civil society contribution?
So like good communication, right? More communication?
I think this is a very important question, because we know at this moment there's more criticism and populism against the EU, and we know that because of all the sanctions and the coming energy crisis, I think the coming winter might be quite difficult for many people, and it might be quite easy to blame EU and EU's policy for that. So I think we have failed to tell the people how much the EU is doing and how much the like normal people are benefiting for the EU. And I think, I don't know what are the measures, how we do it, but I think that's the thing we really need to take care of and think more carefully. And anything that EU is doing, and I mean it's almost everything what we have in our life nowadays, we need to tell the people that that's the EU is the part of the answer. And that's something we really need to think more. And maybe we as politicians and people who are working with the EU and very closely, we are taking it granted, so we don't understand that we really need to explain it every time to the people.
I think it's a shame many people don't realize that EU is a gift to mankind, humankind. Many people don't know it yet. You have to communicate better. Yes.
I dare say, I think you're correct. It's just a little anecdote. The cabinet of our little state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern spent the last two days in Brussels, and we had almost, I think, 12 high-level meetings. We had a cabinet meeting. We, had a big strategy of European policies that we talked about. So it was really high level. And we, of course, did some press work with that. And what did the press write about? And the only question was, how much did you pay for the flights that the cabinet members had to take? So there was no interest in what we talked about, none, on the level. And that shows how far removed the topics are that are being debated on the European level. And we do talk with all these acronyms and all these committees, and it's really abstract. And I think we as politicians within the member states have to communicate better, but I think also we need to think about communication on the EU level in Brussels and maybe on the structure and on the decision-making processes. I don't have the solution. I would be, I think, very successful if I did, but I think we do have a problem there because nowadays people do blame the EU for things that is certainly not right, and they don't know how much we profit.
I will dare to talk on youth in particular. That's what I'm here for. And I think, coming from personal experience, the involvement of youth in policy making is the way to make sure that the youth understands what happens around here, and so that we would be informed about the processes that happen here. Because coming from personal experience, before I became a participant of the Baltic Sea Youth Camp or the Baltic Sea Youth Dialogue, I did not know anything about this. And only through me being a participant, then talking to my friends about it and to colleagues at universities, only then were they informed about this. So direct involvement is, I think, the most efficient way to go about this when thinking about the youth in particular.
I think it's great because we know that one of the biggest strategic risks to a society is young people who haven't got a place in society, especially young men in this case. We know how it unfortunately ends in many cases. So. But more comments?
About young men, sorry, it's a little bit difficult to hear here.
Okay. Well, yeah. I think where this...
Because of the echoes.
No, but just more comments to the...
Yeah, Safir has raised eternity question. So, this is particularly the issue what all the EU officials and many politicians have been thinking about. I don't know what is the right answer, but one could imagine that the recent crises have raised the level of awareness that EU really matters. Everybody can think whether the reaction to COVID crisis would have been more efficient and rapid if all the member states would have tried to cope with it alone. And it's quite easy to understand that that wouldn't have been the case. Or Russian attack, if we all were alone, would it be much better, or would it be safer to be alone? So the crises are sometimes the best consultants. They bring up things to daylight, and I believe that these crises teach each of us and raises the issues what the EU should do more or better to address similar types of crises of the future. But the second point, I have always thought that if EU is considered as a reasonable and important political topic in national level, then the political leaders, like Prime Minister, should keep it high on the agenda and speak. What do they expect from the EU? What is their vision of the future of the EU? Because unless this is not the case, then there is no reactions, there is no comments, one cannot expect that ordinary citizens are interested. If the Prime Minister is not interested, then the ordinary citizens are not interested in the EU matter. So I fully understand that EU is not a primary matter of every week. I'm a former politician myself, and it's not the most sexy thing for many people. But still, it's your duty as a leader of your country to keep it high on the agenda, because it really matters, and you should tell to your citizens what are your expectations, what are the things you want to fight hard in order to achieve in the EU level.
Hey, I have a question to Bettina and Esa. We have a lot of questions from the audience, which is great, but you come sort of more from the inside. Have we got a way to take into account or communicate with those people who ask questions who we might not have time for now in this panel? Is there any channel to reuse or use those questions somehow? Or answered later or something?
Yeah, definitely. So thanks a lot for excellent questions. So a lot of expertise and BSR experience in this room, and of course we cannot go and take all the questions, but we will find a way to
Good.
Because there are also basic questions about the concrete actions and priorities at the moment in the strategy, and we will make sure that there will be a good updated information available to you, and we will find a way to answer these questions. But there's a lot here to, and maybe we could take the next one on transport topic. There was a question here. Just a second, browsing through the list.
And it's great that you can like the questions
as well. So it tells also that which are the most popular. But this one from Seppo Mäkinen, and importance of course the accessibility and connections within the region, and our connections to European networks. So how do we ensure the best possible land, rail, sea transport connections and communication channels, and funding for them, especially during these difficult, challenging times?
And if a difficulty is hearing us, so can you see that? Is it okay? Okay, good. Who wants to take this? Well, someone has to
I
start.
don't know if we have any answers. That's why nobody is raising his hand and wanted to answering. But I think, it's very important that the connections are very crucial in many ways. So that's why it's very important that we ensure this different kind of transport and communication channel. But how we do it, that's the big question. And of course, like, we know that there's a lack of funding for everything. So I can't promise that yes, there will be money coming, but I think these are the things that are very, very important, just that we have a good connections and good transport. But and of course we need to do it at the national level as well. But of course, how we can ensure that EU can help us, and especially how we can ensure that that's around the Baltic Sea region, that's very important.
Mr. Martin.
I'm not sure I quite understand the background of this question, but I would like to mention that, of course, mobility within this crisis, within these exploding energy prices, is becoming so expensive And where I come from, we are a very rural area, so people do need cars because we don't have a very tight public transport system. And for this normal citizen, all of a sudden mobility becomes really difficult because it's hardly, they can't afford it. And so there must be some solution for this, and that's what I meant with we need to act in order to protect also social peace in a way. People really become, and I understand that, very nervous. So I think it was very good, for example, that the EU Commission is now talking about cutting energy prices and then funding it, for the normal people, but also for enterprises. There must be a solution, and I think that needs also to include mobility for the people. And on federal levels that happens. In Germany it happens too, that we fund public transport more now than before, but I'm very happy that the EU Commission is talking about this energy cut, price cut. I think we need that, otherwise mobility will become very difficult.
Shall we take the next question?
Yeah, thanks. And maybe there's one topic here also presented in many questions relate to kind of urgency of actions now, whether it's a green or digital transition or energy transition, and then what are our measures and tools to promote and implement those actions. So how can we ensure that the solutions that we are seeking can be put fast to implementation, and referring that from project idea to project results is normally a long road, and in EU programs. There are a couple of questions related to this kind of urgency and worry about, are we quick enough and not, hopefully not too bureaucratic in our activities. Any comments? Who would like to start?
Will the crisis make that things will start going faster, sort of by default, as always?
Yeah. So I wish I would know the background of this question, but I interpreted that how we can, for instance, make green transition faster, or how we can help the societies to become more digital faster. So I come back to the role of private sector again, because these developments are based on economic rationale, and the role of public sector is quite limited there. But as fast as private sector finds it meaningful and profitable to invest in new technologies, whether they are energy or digital, then things start happening. And Baltic Sea region is a positive region in a sense that if we look at, for instance, our economic structure or the level of digitalization, we are the best of the world as a region. There are, of course, significant, there are individual countries around the world which are better than us, but as a region, we are ahead of the others, thanks to our companies and universities. So, if I could raise one topic in this context, it's the use of data. We are quite well connected to each other, and we could look at what we could do more in order to let data, for instance, health data, to flow cross-border, in order to help businesses and public sector authorities to create more digital care opportunities, new applications which the patients or individuals can use when seeking care. So data is the fastest growing raw material, And we have to understand this and be a one-code area to use data for improving productivity of public services, but also productivity of private services, and create better services for sale.
And just here, for the audience, I guess everyone knows it, but basically if someone doesn't know it, you're representing sort of Sitra now, but also, of course, ex-Prime Minister of Finland and ex-EU Commissar, so just for background, I think it's an important detail. Minister Martin?
When I see this question, I would like to repeat my wish that the EU structures and the programs would become a little more simple and less bureaucratic, and the bureaucracy is not, an aim in itself, and I think we can work at that. And when you see that it takes at least a year from the application to the implementation, and also, me being a science minister, I know Horizon Europe, how difficult it is for small universities to apply for these very complicated programs. Maybe we can work on that to become less bureaucratic and faster. And it's not an aim in itself, and maybe it's possible.
Hey, let's not forget about our third pre-planned question. Should we take that now before the following questions from the audience? What do you say, Bettina?
Yes, we can do that.
So at least we get that sort of out of the system then.
I think it is a little bit in line with what Minister Martin just spoke about speeding up financing, making programs easier. So what is the way forward? How can we strengthen the cooperation? How can we become more successful in incorporating on these themes that we have already discussed? What will it take from government, from civil society? Anybody would like to have a go at this?
Well, I think Minister Martin looked first this way, so perhaps winner or sort of first come, first serve.
I would like to take up your proposal that we should start on a civil society involvement and have especially the young generation informed and educated, but also involved, and open up ways to participate. And I think that will bring us forward, and that will involve people and maybe also speed up things. And the second, of course, to speed up the structures and the processes within the EU structures.
Laure and Katainen.
Well, if I get the chance to say what I'm here to say, it's that definitely the way forward for not only the Baltic Sea region, but for the EU in terms of cooperating successfully, from my point of view, is the involvement of youth in policy-making processes. Because at this moment, from a youth perspective, it feels like the youth is kind of in a box that's locked under your bed, and you keep it there, and it's a resource that you could use because the youth of the Baltic Sea region is passionate about this region. We're well aware of the privilege that we have when we grow up here, get our education here, and we want to give back in any way we can. But for that to happen, you have to let us do that. So in terms of cooperating, I really hope that we can change that and unlock the box and take it under the bed and from under the bed and use it to your avail and put it into action.
But Commissioner Ferreira had sort of, I think the message was, I mean, she mentioned the role of youth as well in her video greeting. Yes.
And it's very great, and we're very thankful that all of you are recognizing what is important for the youth as well.
Let me build on the previous speaker's words. I'm a former exchange student. I belong to the generation who had the first opportunities to participate in Erasmus exchange program financed by the EU. At that time, UK was part of the EU, and I studied there. So I'm a great believer of student exchange. It's the beginning of everything, basically. At least this was the case for me. And we don't even need more or new financing for this because we already have Erasmus, and there are also bilateral programs between the universities. So if there's a political will, or if there's a will, more generally speaking, we could try to increase the exchange between Baltic Sea region countries. We are close to each other, easy to travel, and we are like-minded, look very much alike. So this is a good basis to build on. The second point, which is already discussed quite in depth, is the energy cooperation. So there is a good reasons. We desperately need more energy, new energy sources, and cleaner energy. So if you don't put emphasis on this, I wonder what our priorities are. So those two things.
And Minister Mikkonen.
Well, I think we need to continue to make progress in climate actions together and having the better mutual understanding and better planning together. Those are the one answers. But of course, we also need to more learning by experience and then share the good practices more than what we are doing now. And I also want to mention this research-based knowledge and data analysis. That's very important and powerful tool if we use that. And also what was mentioned earlier is that we need to involve the civil society more closely, and especially the young people, and I think the students are very good ways to do it as well. But also the NGOs, we have a lot of NGOs around the Baltic Sea region and areas, and that's very important tool also to spread the message and tell the people what we are doing and why we need to work together.
Yeah, I will just quickly add that although we do have already, thankfully, various ways in which the youth is involved in policy making, in order to make new ways of cooperating successfully, resources and time have to be allocated for that. And that has to be taken into consideration. Yes.
Good. Hey, let's take one more question from the audience. Esa, shoot up something for us. Yes. What's your last pick?
My last pick is I think of course the most important European task we have is to support Ukraine, and this is a good question from somebody of you about reminding us that Ukraine also partially belongs to the Baltic Sea catchment area, and should there be more cooperation with Ukraine, and what kind of cooperation in the framework of macro-regional strategies. And I just would like to mention that we have this overall EU macro-regional policy framework, that we are just one macro-regional strategy. Then we have, for example, EU strategy for Danube region, where actually Ukrainian presidency should be taking place at the moment. And we have been discussing with our colleagues in other macro-regional strategies as well, that how could we also, in the framework of our common policies, to contribute in this current situation, and also to prepare for the times after the war and rebuilding and reconstruction. But your thoughts on this? How could we react and cooperate and support Ukraine in the framework of Baltic Sea cooperation?
It's an interesting question. Yeah, very good question. Who wants to take that? Minister Martin?
Well, I think after February 24th, we have really intensified our cooperation with the Ukraine on different levels. But let's face it, the Ukraine is a country in war. And so I think at the moment we're talking a lot about supporting Ukraine and supporting the people who have left the Ukraine as refugees, who are in Germany and all over Europe. Being science minister, I'm thinking about cooperation on a science level with our universities are trying to really intensify the ties to the Ukraine universities in order to have science exchange, but also student exchanges, and in general have closer research connection. And I think that has really accelerated since February, at least where I come from. So that's just one example, but I think there are many more areas where we can intensify. And we already are thinking about how will we help the Ukraine to rebuild after this horrible war.
I just focus on the future to the time when Ukraine has won the war and they are in rebuilding mode. So then especially our cooperation is very much needed, I guess. Of course, it depends on Ukrainians' needs and what do they expect. But when we are rebuilding the economy, for instance, there's no point to rebuild the same economy as they had, but the new economy. And if looking at, for instance, the concentration of companies which are circular economy companies in our region, it's quite significant. So this part of the world is one card area in terms of number and per GDP on circular economy. So this is just one idea what we could offer to Ukrainians to rebuild the economy, but at the same time become future-proof. So also the civil society plays a significant role already today, but also in the future. And then I come back to this exchange student programs. It's one of the concrete way to support Ukrainians to see the future.
And then we have a ringside seat comment from first row. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Just very briefly, because we already have ongoing cooperation with Ukraine. We had it before the war. The Ukraine is an observer state, for example, in Council of the Baltic Sea States. Just to tell you very briefly what we did as a CBSS, and I think this is very much relevant also, kind of indicates what the wider Baltic Sea networks could do. Our civil protection network was mobilized to assist the EU mechanism to help the Ukraine, and I'm very proud that I think that we managed to help the EU mechanism to assist, to provide the equipment for civil protection, firefighting, and so on and so forth, to be even more effective. Our human trafficking network was activated as already before the war. We found out that there is because of the pandemic, there is a kind of a demand side when it comes to the human trafficking. We are only thinking when the supply side will come, and so with the emigres, with the refugees, it came. So it seems that our cooperation, and Ukraine was already our aim before the war. After the war, it was only intensified. A very fantastic example is Children at Risk and the promotion of the Barnahus models that is providing the assistance to the children, the unified assistance and service to children, witnesses or victims of violence, which is unfortunately a new normal in Ukraine today because of the war situation. By the end of the year, the Council of Europe, financed by the EU, using the methodology of the CBSS, there will be 11 Barnahus houses in Ukraine, plus, I don't remember exactly, but a few mobile teams working according to this Barnahus methodology. These are very concrete things, but there is more. I think you mentioned, Minister, that the cooperation with the universities, with the students. I can tell you that right after, we have a couple of Baltic-wide networks, Baltic University Network, Baltic Sea Region University Networks, etc., etc. I posed the very question right after war erupted, what those networks can do for Ukrainian students, for Ukrainian scientists, etc., etc. I think that we need a little bit more coordinated action. Maybe this is a good idea to discuss within the PA education, what the Baltic Sea region could do more for Ukraine. But there are definitely even more topics that we could discuss in the future.
Thank you very much. And I think it's actually time for sort of a key takeaway or final takeaway round. before I ask Bettina, you to wrap up also some of it. So if we start with Minister Mikkonen from there, so the key final thoughts, key takeaway.
Well, as we have seen in recent years, lots can happen and fast. And we need to prepare for all kind of crises. And I think the preparedness has been the big lesson we have learned. And we need to do it together around the Baltic Sea region. I think that's the most important thing, that we need to work together. That's the only way we can be more prepared for different kind of crises, and that's the only way we can solve different kind of crises.
Thank you very much. Katainen.
One way to think is that the Baltic Sea region is one of the hotspots of security today, and one of the hotspots where authoritarians and democracies are against. So, and one of the areas which has suffered from brutal aggression of authoritarians, and which forces us to put our forces together and renew ourselves partially. And here, for instance, energy issue and green transition are on top of the agenda. So we are under a significant pressure, and it's up to us to decide whether we are successful, whether we can keep our democratic model, whether we can keep up a good spirit amongst the citizens, even though many people are worried about the situation today. But we know each other and we trust each other. So there are good elements to build the future.
Thank you very much. Laure.
Well, for things to go forward and for our grand plans to be taken into action, I would suggest that we not only turn to our specialists, but also, of course, the youth. The people who will someday be in your spots and can learn from all of you, from what you have done best, and hopefully do it even better. But for that, you have to let us. And thank you for what you have already let us do.
Thank you.
I think this would have been a good last statement, but I tried to top that. I think she's totally right. We should let the young generation participate more and find ways to do that, because also I think the way we think we let young generations participate doesn't always work. So I think we need to have also new formats of participation. But I also think we need to involve all generations. Also the old generation has a right to be participating. So I think we should think on a civil society level. And the second point I would like to make is that we've talked about all the risks and the crises, but in the Baltic Sea region, we have this incredible potential. There are studies that say together we have the potential to be world-leading producers of renewable energies. We have a youth that's educated. We have among the most stable democracies in our area. So we have this incredible potential, and we better use it.
And talking about the generation thing, I think it's a good thing. We talk about inclusion, diversity. It means also age and generational diversity, which is a good sort of point from both of you. Thank you very much. Bettina, I would like to hear what do you make of all this? A lot of good, thought-provoking, stimulating stuff.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to the panelists for this very interesting discussion, and thank you for all the good questions. I think one key takeaway is that the Baltic cooperation has never been more important than it is now. It's always been important, but the importance now is very clear. The themes which came up are not surprising: energy crisis, reducing energy dependencies, at the same time as we have to tackle climate and green transition, to the key themes. I think it's not saying that many other themes are not important, but I think these next to security, of course, what takes up our minds. But in order to do this, we need to strengthen and intensify the way we cooperate. I hear saying better planning, better focusing on financing, pooling financing together. These are the key ways we are actually going to be able to intensify cooperation. And we also have to change the modes and be more inclusive. Youth, older generations, all of societies, NGOs have to be more included in the way we cooperate at different levels. I think those are my key takeaways, and I think this should ideally lead us into a good future and a harmonic cooperation.
Harmonic cooperation is good. That's good. what a nice way to end this part of the seminar. A bit of a sort of flash mob thing. Bettina and Esa, please come over. I think this is basically it. I think we can thank all of our panelists already, our distinguished panel. Thank you very much. Great to have you here. Good stuff. And many, many thanks to the audience as well. A great number of questions and comments. I think that was very good. Hey, what now? We have lunch. It's supposed to be sort of traditional Finnish stuff. There's a vegan option as well, a separate table if you ask. Please take full advantage of the networking village. The afternoon program. Bettina, walk us through there a bit. What's the plan?
Yeah, there are 3 parallel sessions throughout the afternoon. You have them in the program, you see them here, and be aware that they happen in different locations and not all of them are here.
Yeah. Had a bit of a coffee break in between networking and then more program towards late afternoon. And don't forget about the highlights of the day, perhaps. The evening program, evening reception, starting at 7 o'clock.
And there are buses leaving at 18:30.
Yes, lowest level 02. So that's about it. And we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 10 with Esa as well, and we'll do another panel with excellent questions and comments and, you know,
and a bit
the usual stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you all very much from our part. Thanks. Thank you.